In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to create a form from Design View in Microsoft Access. So this 10-step process can just help to guide you through in probably the most efficient order in order to do this. So you need to determine, what you want your form to look like and what data it should contain, and this might take some thought and planning. And then you choose the table to base your form on. Usually we're building forms based on a table, but it can be a query at times. So we're going to go to Access, choose Create, and then Form Design. And then the very first thing we need to do before we begin building the form is assign the record source. And that record source is the table or query that you determined in step 2. We're then going to set our headers and footers as desired, add our fields, and then mostly go ahead and do the formatting. So I'm going to do a really quick example of this in this database for the employees table. So just a simple table with employee information. So we go to Create, Form Design. So this brings up an empty shell of a form, and the only thing we have to start with is our detail section. The detail section is where the fields will go in most of our forms and our reports. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to the form properties. So the form properties are the properties for the entire form object. Once we have different items and controls and sections, we'll have different things we can have properties of, but right now we're choosing the form properties, and on the All tab it's got the record source, or we can go to the Data tab, we have the record source, and this is very important that we assign our record source immediately. So our record source in this case is the employees table. And actually, I'll just take a step back for a moment and delete the record source. So when the form has no record source and I go to add fields, it doesn't offer me anything specific. And I can choose to show all tables. But if we add the record source, then the record source is linked in a sense to the form, and it will offer me the appropriate fields. So form properties, choose the employees table as the record source, and now when I go to add fields, it offers me the fields that have been set up as the record source. Okay, so that's everything up to step 4. And then step 5 is to decide if you want a page header and footer and or a form header and footer. So the form header and footer shows up at the top and bottom of the form when you display it on the screen, and the page header and footer shows up at the top and bottom of the page when you print. We don't typically print a form, or it's not its primary purpose, but we certainly can. So you decide what you want. You don't have to have all of these, but those are the options. So by doing the process in this order, we've got the structure for the form in place, and then we go ahead and add our fields. Typically, we are building forms as our main way to access the table data and to edit the table data. So most commonly, we'll put in all fields. This is where your users, if you have users for a form, this is where they are likely going to do their data entry. We've got our 4 different views here. I'm going to jump to form view, so that's where we would use this form. That's where we would do our data entry. So I've got, I turned these blue so you can see the form header and footer, and typically we might put titles, pictures, date and time, or that kind of generic information in the form header and footer, or just use them for formatting. And then in the detail is where we put our fields so that as we navigate through the form, we see the details from each record showing up on the screen. You definitely want to consider your formatting. Make sure your fields are not cut off. I'm going to make one quick formatting change here as an example. That notes field was being cut off in my display, and I've got lots of room on my screen. So I'm actually going to take that particular field, put it up over here to the side, and then just go to my form view again. So now I'm using more of the screen, and that larger notes field isn't cut off. It's easy to see the entire text, and I think making a little bit better use of the screen. You can also do some modifications in layout view. So layout view allows us to size some fields, but we can see the data while we're doing it. Okay, so if I wanted to, and everything doesn't have to be the same size here. So actually, if I'll do this as an example. If I wanted to size the employee ID down, maybe the extension down, whatever. Every field doesn't have to be the same size. You just want to try to design something that is somewhat eye-appealing. And again, then you go to your form view to run the form and actually edit the data. From there, you can get fancier with your formatting. So you can add titles, pictures, graphics, format your fonts, colors, anything like that. If you're adding a little bit more advanced features like calculations and subforms, you can do that. I'll leave that subject for another video. And always test the form by adding some data, doing all of these, add, delete, modify, and just make sure that the form is working properly. And so that is form design. For some reason my form header and footer kind of disappeared on me there. I must have clicked something, but it shows how if you don't have those sections showing here in the design, they won't show up on the screen. So you can decide on the size and format of those objects. And just as always, save your object as you work so that you don't lose your changes, and go ahead and finish up the design.